to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Worcester podcast. We are a community built on love, hope, and justice. Our goal is to inspire people to take on the challenges of a changing world. Each week we'll bring you a reflection from our minister, the Reverend Aaron Payson, recorded during our Sunday service. Maybe it'll move you, challenge your thinking, or even stir up a little righteous indignation. That's all welcome here. Thanks for listening.
The Plains Indians tell the story, once there was a mouse, a busy mouse, like all mice are, nose to the ground, searching and collecting. But every now and then, he would lift his head and hear something strange. A roaring, far away. And when he asked his fellow mice about it, they told him he was foolish. There's no sound, they would say. Get back to work. But the roaring would not leave him. And one day, rather than push his curiosity back down, Mouse decided to follow it. The curiosity led him to a fast-flowing river, vast and thundering and more alive than anything he had ever imagined. A frog on a lily pad off the shore of the river offered him a gift. Crouch as low as you can and jump as high as you are able. So Mouse did. And for one brilliant moment, he saw the sacred mountains as he hit the apex of his jump. And then he fell into the river. Wet and frightened, he barked, "You have tricked me!" Frog said, "You're not harmed. What did you see?" "Sacred mountains," Mouse whispered. "Then you have a new name," said Frog. "You are now Jumping Mouse." On his journey toward those mountains, Jumping Mouse met a variety of creatures. He met a dying buffalo. And though he had only 2 eyes and the journey ahead was dark, he decided to give one of his eyes to Buffalo so that Buffalo might live. Later, he met Wolf, who had lost his memory. And Mouse decided to give away his remaining eye so Wolf might be whole. Blind now and trembling, Mouse sat alone on the edge of a sacred lake. He knew that Eagle would find him, and it did. But when he awoke, he could see, far more clearly than he had ever seen before. A familiar voice called out, "Crouch down as low as you can and jump as high as you can." So Mouse leapt, and the wind caught Mouse and carried Mouse higher and higher and higher. The clearer his sight became, the higher he rose. Frog called out, "You have a new name now. You're called Eagle." So what's the story about? Fear? Courage? Transformation? All of the above? Yes, and the through line in this tale is how at each turn Jumping Mouse transforms its anxiety into something else that propels them on their journey. Modern wisdom would have us believe that the opposite of anxiety is what? Calm, peace, right? Y'all have learned that? If you're anxious, you need to get calm. Ancient wisdom, on the other hand, tells us that the opposite of anxiety is not calm, it's curiosity. Think about that for a moment. As a colleague recently noted, Rabbi Marcia Prager teaches where worry says, "Oh no, what's going to happen?" The essence of anxiety, yes. Curiosity says, "Oh wow, I wonder what might happen." The other mice never heard the roaring because they were too busy to listen. Anyone know this feeling? Coworkers, family, society at large. Anxiety narrows our focus to an immediate and to the manageable. It was Mouse's willingness to wonder about the strange sound rather than suppressing it that set Mouse's entire transformation in motion. Curiosity is the first act of courage. And the world seldom honors this kind of courage because it is often an indictment of the world itself. When Mouse asked the other mice about the roaring, they dismissed him and retreated into their holes. Anxiety, it turns out, is socially contagious. Groups often enforce it by punishing those who ask disruptive questions. Jumping Mouse's journey suggests that healing sometimes begins in the willingness to be different, and to know that in being different, you are going to be ridiculed by many. And anxiety wants us to stay small and safe. Mouse finally sees the river. It is too large to take in. This is what curiosity risks. Encountering something far bigger than we could even imagine. But it is precisely the overwhelming nature of the river and its roaring, its depth, and its power that begins to expand Mouse's sense of what the world actually is. In the original story that Petra LeBaron Botts of the North Cascades Institutes relates, it is Raccoon who befriends Mouse and accompanies him to the river. In those moments of overwhelm, it is often the presence of one whose experience of the world is different that helps us confront the fears of our own unknowing. The original says, little Mouse walked with Raccoon. His heart was still pounding in his breast, and Raccoon was talking to him, taking him upon strange paths, and little Mouse smelled the scent of many things that had gone by his way. Many times he became so frightened he almost turned back. Finally, they came to the river. It was huge, breathtaking, deep and clear in places and murky in others. Little Mouse was unable to see across it because it was so immense. It roared, it sang, it cried, and thundered on its course. Little Mouse saw great and little pieces of the world carried along on its surface. It is so powerful, Little Mouse said, fumbling for words. It's a great thing, answered Raccoon. But here, let me introduce you to my friend. In a smoother, shallower place was a lily pad. Bright and green, sitting upon it was Frog. Almost as green as the pad it sat on, and Frog's white belly stood out clearly. "Hello, little friend," said Frog. "Welcome to the river." "I gotta leave you now," says Raccoon, "but don't fear, little brother. Frog will take care of you now." And Raccoon left, and looking along the riverbank for food, that they might wash and eat. Little Mouse approached the water and looked at it. He saw a frightened mouse reflected there. "Who are you, Little Mouse?" asked the reflection. "Are you not afraid of being that far out into the great river?" "No," said Frog. "I'm not afraid. I've been given the gift from birth to live both above and within the river. When winter comes and freezes this medicine, I cannot be seen, but all the while Thunderbird flies, I am here. To visit me, one must come when the world is green. I, my friend, am the keeper of water." Then we discover that anxiety demands guarantees before acting. In the original story, Frog asks Mouse if they'd like to have some medicine power. "Medicine power? Me?" said Mouse. "Yes, if that's possible. Then crouch as low as you can and jump as high as you are able, and you will find the medicine," said Frog. He did what he was instructed, and Mouse crouched as low as Mouse could and jumped. And when Mouse did, their eyes saw the sacred mountains. Mouse couldn't believe his eyes, but there they were. Then he fell back to earth and, like I said, landed in the river. He was frightened. "You've tricked me," said Mouse. "Wait," said Frog, "you're not harmed. And you saw the sacred mountains. And you have a new name." When Mouse lands in the water, soaking wet and terrified, and accuses Frog of trickery, but Frog redirects him. "What did you see?" This is the pivot from anxiety to curiosity. Even with difficulty, the question, "What did you see?" transforms a frightening experience into a source of meaning. Anxiety interprets hard experiences as evidence of danger. Curiosity asks what they might be teaching. Frog didn't explain what will happen when Mouse jumps. He simply invited him to crouch low and leap. Curiosity leaps anyway. And in that leap, however briefly, Jumping Mouse sees the sacred mountains. The vision comes through the vulnerability of the jump, not before it. But perhaps the greatest gift of curiosity is empathy, which is the crux of the story when Mouse meets buffalo and wolf. Jumping Mouse gives away first one eye and then another, his very capacity to see, for the sake of beings greater than himself. This is what sustained curiosity produces. Empathy so deep it becomes sacrificial. It doesn't give from the obligation of fear of consequences. He gives because his curiosity about the other, the buffalo and the wolf, have made their suffering real and personal to him. Anxiety keeps us self-focused. Curiosity opens us to the inner life of others. Unless we get stuck in the internal dialogue about how much of ourselves are we willing to sacrifice for another, let me suggest to you that it's all metaphor anyway. "I am sick and I am dying," the buffalo said, "and my medicine has told me that only the eye of a mouse can heal me. But little friend, there is no such thing as a tiny mouse." Jumping Mouse was shocked. "One of my eyes? One of my tiny eyes?" He scurried back to a strand of chokecherries, but the breathing came harder and slower. "He will die," thought Jumping Mouse, "if I don't give him one of my eyes. He is too great a being to let die." He went back to where Buffalo lay and spoke. "I am Mouse," he said with a shaky voice, and you, my friend, are a great being. I will not let you die. I have 2 eyes, so you may have one of them." The minute he said it, Jumping Mouse's eye flew out of his head, and the buffalo was made whole. Buffalo jumped to his feet, shaking Jumping Mouse's whole world. Suddenly, the mouse ran, and when he stopped, he came upon Gray Wolf, who was sitting there doing absolutely nothing. "Hello, Wolf," Jumping Mouse said. Wolf's ears came alert and his eyes shone. "Wolf? Wolf? Yes, that's what I am. I'm a wolf." But then his mind dimmed again, and it was not long before he sat quietly again, completely without memory as to who he was. Each time Jumping Mouse reminded him who he was, he became excited with the news, but then would soon forget again. Such a great being, thought Jumping Mouse. But he has no memory. Jumping Mouse went to the center of this new place and was quiet, and he listened for a long time to the beating of his own heart, and suddenly he made up his mind. Scurried back to where Wolf sat and spoke. "Brother Wolf," Jumping Mouse said. "Wolf? Wolf?" said Wolf. "Please, Wolf," said Jumping Mouse, "please listen to me. I know what will heal you. It's one of my eyes, and I want to give it to you. You're the greater being than I, and I am only a mouse. Please take it." Jumping Mouse stopped speaking. His eye flew out of his head and made Wolf whole. Tears fell from the cheeks of Wolf, but Mouse could not see them, for now he was blind. Jumping Mouse is completely blind before he becomes eagle. This is perhaps the most radical lesson. The transformation from a life driven by anxiety and smallness into an expansive vision and freedom requires passing through a period of not knowing. Anxiety clings to familiar sight. Curiosity trusts the darkness as part of the process of becoming. Notice that the final gift isn't simply restored vision. It's elevated vision. The capacity to see the whole landscape at once. This is what a life shaped by curiosity rather than anxiety ultimately offers. Not just relief from fear, but a fundamentally transformed perspective. Empathy and compassion are natural fruits of that altitude, because from up high, the suffering and struggle of all beings becomes visible and real. Anxiety is the story we tell ourselves to stay right where we are. Nose to the ground, safe and small. Curiosity is the roaring in our ears that refuses to be silenced, the inner invitation to follow something we cannot yet name toward a life larger than the one fear has built for us. And every time we follow that sound, we find ourselves, like Jumping Mouse, not calmer exactly, but more alive, more connected, more capable of love. There is a sound beneath the busy noise of our lives, beneath the scratch and scurry of our days, a roaring that the frightened called foolish, a river calling us from our safer ways. Crouch low and jump. You will not land in an expected place. You will probably end up soaking wet and full of fury. But ask yourself, what did you see? Let go of what you think you cannot live without. The eye you offer freely to another will open in you something vast and wide, a sky you never knew and a world made broader. The eagle circling overhead is not the end of you. What strikes us upon sometimes is our saving. What terrifies us sometimes makes us whole. So, follow the roaring you cannot ignore. Walk toward the river of a wider life. Crouch and jump. And trust the wind of possibilities. The name you carry now is not your final name. You are still becoming who you've always been. Amen. And blessed be.
Thanks for tuning in. If you're just crossing our path, either new to this congregation or curious about Unitarian Universalism, check out our website, uucworcester.org. You'll find lots of information there about our beliefs, the 8 guiding principles, religious exploration for children and adults, our social action initiatives, and the many groups we offer to help people connect and have fun. And consider joining us, in person or online, on a Sunday morning at 10 a.m. We'd love to meet you.